Hello, my name is Bradley and I'm your host of The Internal Game. Okay, I have a pretty important video for you guys today, if I do say so myself. And I really believe, like with everything that I have and everything that I am, that what we're meant to do here is awaken, right? I believe that we have this like inner purpose to awaken, and whatever our outer purpose is entirely up to us. What that means is that everyone's inner purpose is to remember who they are, return to the kingdom within, and then your outer purpose is whatever you want it to be, is in like whatever job, whatever mission, whatever purpose you want to give yourself as far as the doing is concerned is completely up to you. But I'm pretty convinced that everyone's inner purpose is the same, and it's to awaken from the illusion of this dream, right? So even before you have found yourself in the law of assumption communities, right? Like maybe trying to get a person, right? Maybe I know that's how I found it. But like even before that, like if you think about like your spiritual journey, like seeking something, whether it be self-help, healing, trying to better self kind of thing. People found the law of attraction. I know I found the law of attraction. I know started learning about emotions and things like that. So like it was a constant search, or religion, anything for that matter, just like trying to make sense of some things. And it all is supposed to lead us back to within. I remember a funny story before I continue. My wife the other day, she's like, "Hey, if you ever need to take a few days off of like making YouTube videos, I can fill in for you." And I was like, "Is that right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I'll just go in there and say, inside first, outside second." And I started laughing. Because but it is true, right? But anyway, a lot of times our seeking, before we actually realize that it's within, it leads to a lot of suffering, right? It's still not being enough, still missing something, and then of course, because we keep looking outside of ourselves, we keep finding ourselves by ourselves kind of thing, right? And then the breakup happens, and then lose the job, things like that. And then we find like the law of assumption, for instance, and we're like, okay, I realize that it's coming from within me, and now I'm going to manifest this back. That's where I was at. And even after manifesting the things that I intended to manifest, there was still something missing. And it leads you to like this whole like, man, is it this game of like desire, get it, desire, get it, desire, get it, will ever stop desiring kind of thing? And yeah, you can. And it's like the game here, like the actual, the purpose, like, remember that I was saying the inner purpose is to awaken. And the spiritual awakening isn't just the realization that it's inside first, outside second. It isn't just the realization that we're creating our reality. It isn't just the realization that state of being is king. It isn't just the realization that like my identity, whatever, right? Or even the realization that like maybe, let's not say realization, but like maybe the idea and the belief that we are God, right? So the awakening actually happens when we start to realize that we are not our minds. Because until this actually happens, even when we learn about law of assumption, even when we learn about like manifesting and creating stuff, different experiences, changing our identities, right? And really what that is, like when we're trying to change an identity to have different experience, is still jumping from one identity to another identity. Rather that be like an identity that has maybe not so favorable beliefs about self to an identity who does. And yes, it changes the external experience, but nonetheless, it still comes with fear. It still comes with a mental position against anybody who's not this identity or agrees with this identity. It still comes with the law of polarity, right? Happy, sad. Yeah, every emotion and its opposite, right? For sure. And it still comes with suffering. Because identity, a mind-made identity, is still just that, a mind-made identity. So even if this mind-made identity is calling itself God, like you've heard me talk about before, it just doesn't know what that means. And that's why we experience, and I've been here a long time, or I was there a long time too. That's why we experience the whole like, man, I shouldn't be sad, I'm God, or trying to affirm through like an emotion, like being like, no, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, or I am, and still feeling like we're coming up short, because the mind can't make sense of what this actually is, right? Because it's not who you are. And when we identify with the mind, which means like identify with every thought that we get, and believing that these thoughts are who we are, then we're going to suffer because it's unstable. And most importantly, it's not who we are. I do a lot of one-on-ones, and as of late, it kind of is case by case, I guess. I didn't think it used to be like that, but it's definitely like this now. At least that's more of a realization that I've came to. And, you know, the issue, the suffering is always going to be because of your identification with mind, and not really knowing who you are as far as God, the I am, the God consciousness. Because anytime that we identify with mind, even if we're calling ourselves God in the moment, mind is separate from. Mind doesn't believe that it's connected to everything and everyone. It has to have a mental position. So, and it exists, and all identities are existed. All mental identities are based from a past and have some projected future. Both illusions, right? Ideally, we want to disidentify with mind as much as possible, and not just for the fact that like it's going to help you with like your actual manifestations of not doubting and not being fearful, because you're not going to be doubtful and fearful if you're not buying into thoughts. This is just a fact. And so not only will it help you with that, but it's actually a maximum benefit to you because it's actually who you are. This being, this presence, this God consciousness, this God, this I am, right? And until we actually start to get to know this part of ourselves, this thing, this what we are, then we'll just jump from identity to identity, trying to create different experiences, which comes with, and that comes with its own form of suffering and fear and all that other good stuff. Even if it's a more favorable way of life, because you're in a more favorable identity, it's still an identity nonetheless. It's still a little small human identity, mind made. Don't you want to know, like what you actually are? You know, you see people like 23andme.com and ancestry.com. People want to know where they came from. You know, they want to know like, oh, like see, like my mom is half Mexican, my dad's a few things, right? And like, people want to. And ideally, it was kind of cool back in the day. I was like, oh, I kind of know where they came from and what I have in my bloodline, kind of stuff, right? But that's still just a human self. Don't we want to know like who we actually are? Like what it is we actually feel that safety, actually feel that God sense? Because I can't explain it to you, because no one can. There's not one spiritual teacher that can explain to you who you are and what you are. You have to feel it within. Only you can do that. But the first step in doing that is to get out of your mind and to realize that you are not your mind. Doesn't mean that you can't ever think a thought again. It just means that you stop believing them. It just means that you stop taking it so seriously. And like I was saying in the one-on-ones, I've been doing a lot of one-on-ones lately, or I have been for a while, but like lately the one-on-ones that I've been doing, we've been taking an approach about, let's get our mind for a little while, right? And the realizations that people are coming to is exactly that. Wow, I'm not my mind. I didn't realize that I was playing so small in this human character, and this human character had all this fear and all these beliefs about things, and I'm actually none of those things. And it's like, yeah, exactly, right? So when people say, you know, coaches, people on YouTube, spiritual teachers, whatever, that are talking about manifesting, I don't care, but like when they're talking about create from your I am, this is what they like. If they know, this is what they mean. I don't know if they do, if they don't, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, this is what creating from the I am is. This is what creating from the God consciousness is. This is what knowing that you are God is. This is what be still and know that I am God is to realize that you are not your mind. When you start doing that, when you stop not taking every thought seriously, that's why I started to inch this stuff in small, right? Like, hey, just a thought, just a thought, just a thought, just a thought. Start there. So I started to kind of inch that stuff in the videos a lot more because, like, I do understand that, we find these channels, we want our person, we want this, we want that. It's like, no, you understand, help me, help me. I know, I've been there. But I know that there's no person in this world that's going to make you feel any more full or even come close to knowing who, like, to actually realizing who you are. And when you start getting out of mind and you realize, wow, these are just thoughts that I've just been latching onto my entire life. And you start being like, wow, like, that's just something that, like, this human character that I was playing believed in. Like, it's not even, wow, like, I'm free, right? Then by default, all that, like, by getting out of mind by default, like, you're going to start shedding away all those things that aren't you. Because they're not you. And then from this place, you can call forth whatever experience that you want. I have many different things going on in my life that, like, it's not just YouTube, it's not just this, or not just that. Like, I'm God, right? You are, like, but not in the egotistical way of I'm God, like, not a new identity from a small human self saying I'm God, but from an actual knowing of I'm God the same way that the sun ray is the sun, that a wave is the ocean, that I'm an ocean and a drop, not a drop in the ocean, right? And a drop in the ocean kind of thing, actually. But you get what I'm saying. So we want to actually start to awaken, because if not, we suffer. And one of my favorite things Eckhart Tolle ever said was, he said, suffering is necessary until you realize that it's not. And I'm pretty sure what he meant by that is, like, yeah, the suffering gets us to channels like this. And seeking, still still trying to get the things that we feel whole. Like, it gets us here, right? But now we can start to actually get to know, like, what and who we actually are. And if you've made it this far in the video, I also want to say one more thing about Eckhart Tolle. In one of his books, he says, if you're drawn to me, he was speaking, so if you're drawn to me, that means there's presence that exists in you, which what he meant was, like, you've already started your awakening process. And he's like, just like egos are drawn to bigger egos. He was like, so, yeah. And I think that's why I have, like, there's so much success in the one-on-ones and, like, talking about what I talk about, and even on here, really, is because, like, if you're watching me, whatever is in me is in you. And so, like, you are drawn to presence. You do know that there's something inside you, that you do know that there's something that's awakening, or at least wants to, or knows that it's true. So, like, awaken. The only reason that it's a little fearful to stop thinking is because we're so used to identifying with every thought, and all the thoughts, and it's who we are, right? In our mind, we're like, no, like, if I stop believing this way, then who am I? If I stop doing this, then who am I? If I don't focus on this past anymore, then I can't be a victim anymore. I can't be this person that these things happen to them anymore. And, like, if I stop focusing on this idea of salvation in the future, then, like, I'll never get it. All illusion. Again, just a thought. Ideally, we want to awaken, realize that we're not our minds, feel the wholeness and completeness, the fulfillment, the love, all that stuff within the kingdom, where it's at, right? Within, as within, so without. Inside first, outside second, right? And then you will get your reflection, plus some. But it's not in the seeking. It's not in the searching. It's not in any of those things. It only leads to more seeking. Your treasure is inside of you, and we can we can know it mentally, but we can only really know, like, we can know the fact, I guess, maybe, I guess is a better way of saying it, mentally, saying, oh yeah, I do believe I'm creating this stuff. Like, we have evidence that we can say, like, oh yeah, I created this, but you still created it from an identity. We want to get to who and what you actually are. This can only be felt. It can't be understood by the mind. It can't be explained with words by the mind. You have to access this within yourself. I think one of my favorite things that I ever do is, like, when I work with people and they tell me, hey, or they actually do it just from the videos, and they tell me, hey, like, I didn't realize I was playing so small. I didn't realize that, like, I wasn't my mind. I didn't have to buy into all those thoughts. I didn't realize that, like, this is where peace is. Like, I actually feel amazing. I've been depressed. Like, that is the coolest stuff in the world to me, because, like, that's what it's about. That's what we came here to do. And then from there, have a little bit of fun, have some experience, go through some challenges, like, right? Live the whole experience. But with that, be still and know that I am God within. And you can only be still when you're not frantically living in the mind. Because again, I don't care if it's even a more favorable position in the mind. It's still a position in the mind, and it's not who you are. And it will always carry some form of fear of losing that identity, or that identity being threatened the same way that the other one did. Again, illusion. They're all just characters that you've decided to believe in, no matter what it is. So until we can get out of the character mode and be like, okay, this is who I actually am, then we can create from the fullness. We can create from that peace within. Not lacking, like, no desperation to get a person or anything for that matter. And knowing that everything is fine and that it's yours. That is a really, really good place to be. It's the only place to be. Right here, right now, being still, knowing that you're a God. And this can be accessed by just a thought. Oh, that's just a thought. Oh, that's just a thought. That's just a thought. That has nothing to do with me. That's just a thought. That's not who I am. That's just a thought. And then you keep this up and over and over again. And then they stop coming as much. And you start to get access to this, like, wow, like, I actually have been feeling pretty stable for quite some time now. A few good hours. Wow, I didn't know that. And then you put some attention in your body. And you feel that being within, the unmanifested, the God, you, right? And then you realize the wholeness and fullness that already exists within you, and then you stop wanting. And again, it's not like you can't get your manifestations from wanting, or in a wanting state. You can, but, like, there's a really high chance that you end up losing them again. Really high. Because it's never going to be enough. Just like the books, they're never enough. Just like the videos over and over again, they're never enough. The finding a new teacher, finding a new book, finding a new class to take, finding a new all of it's never going to be enough. It'll put a little mask over it for a little while, but it's not what you're missing. It's not what what's happening is you haven't realized that you are whole within. The kingdom is within, like, and that's where we need to go. So you're not your mind. It's not a thing. It's fun. I mean, it's I guess cool. It's cool to play around with. You can create some cool stuff with your mind. You can actually go about day and have it and use your mind to think and do things that you need to do. But to incessantly worry and to incessantly be fearful and going from here to here, here to here, here to here all day because you're believing every thought that you get is quite insane. Trust me, I know I did it, and I suffered for a very, very, very long time. You don't have to suffer. Like, you don't have to suffer while all your manifestations are taking shape. You know you know that they're yours, and you can only do that when you're not buying into fearful thoughts, doubtful thoughts. Again, actually not even fearful. They're just thoughts that you deem fearful, and then you believe them. Now you're fearful. Like, but when you're not buying into thought in general, and it's like, oh, that's just a thought. That's just a thought. Now you're not fearful anymore, right? And if state of being matters, which it does, then why wouldn't you want to be stable? Because you're going to get that reflection, not the fear reflection. And this is who and what you are, not your mind. Find out for yourself. I love you guys. You know, and then after you realize this, like, take a look around and realize that everyone is walking around in their head, asleep. And we can bring some presence to that, some lightness to that. You do matter. Your state of consciousness matters to the entire collective consciousness. It does. So, how do we change the world? By changing ourselves. That's all I got. See you guys soon.